When you think about modern dog training, where do you think those ideas actually came from? Well, today we're going to dig into a really fascinating and kind of unexpected connection. We're talking about how the quiet methods of so-called horse whisperers completely flipped the script on how we communicate with our dogs. It's a story of how empathy and trust traveled from the horse stable right into our living rooms.
It seems like a bit of a stretch, doesn't it? I mean, what could a 1,000-pound prey animal, a horse, possibly teach us about training our best friend, our family dog? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is pretty much everything.
All right, part one, from myth to method. To really get this connection, we first have to peel back the layers of the Hollywood fantasy and look at the real-world stuff that inspired it all.
So, you know the pop culture idea of a horse whisperer, right? Thanks to the book and the movie, we get this picture of some kind of mystical healer with almost magical powers. But the reality? It's way more practical and honestly, a lot more amazing. The character was actually inspired by real guys like Buck Brannaman and Monty Roberts, who don't use magic at all. They use patient, careful observation. They're students of animal behavior. And this quote from Monty Roberts, man, it just gets right to the heart of their whole philosophy. It's this total 100% rejection of violence and force. It's built on a really simple idea. Pain absolutely destroys trust, and if you don't have trust, you can never have a real partnership. So, part two, the horse's secret language. Okay, so what are these big ideas from the horse world that kicked off this whole revolution in thinking? Let's jump in.
Monty Roberts came up with this term, equus, to describe what he saw as the universal, nonverbal language of horses. It's a whole conversation happening with these tiny, subtle cues. The little twitch of an ear, how high they hold their head, the way they move. He was convinced that this was a language that we humans could not only learn to read, but actually learn to speak back.
And you can see this all come together in his famous join-up method. So inside a round pen, the trainer uses their own body language, nothing threatening, to guide the horse. They're just watching, waiting for those little signals from the horse. An ear turns in, the head starts to lower. The second those signs appear, the trainer turns away a bit, which is an invitation for the horse to come closer. And that is the absolute key. The horse chooses to connect. It's a partnership, not a surrender. Now here's another game-changing concept: pressure and release. And no, this is not about pain. It's about applying a super gentle pressure, could be from a lead rope or it could just be you stepping into the horse's personal space, and then releasing it the instant the horse gives the right response. The release itself is the reward. It teaches the animal, hey, this is the comfortable spot, which is the total opposite of a constant nagging pull that they just learn to lean into and fight against. Part three, how dogs learned horse. Okay, now this is where it gets really, really cool. Let's look at how these exact same principles made the jump from the stable right into our own backyards.
It turns out, just like horses have equus, our dogs have their own silent language too. A Norwegian trainer named Turid Rugaas did a ton of research on this, and she called them calming signal. And these are things you see your dog do all the time. A dog licking its lips, or yawning when it's definitely not tired, or suddenly just sniffing the ground like it's the most interesting thing in the world. We usually just write it off as them being distracted or bored. But a lot of the time, what the dog is actually saying is, hey, I'm a little stressed out here, or I'm not a threat, let's just keep things peaceful. Learning to read these is like getting a secret decoder ring for your dog. And remember that pressure and release idea? Well, think about pulling on the leash. The old school way was this constant tug of war, right? Which just makes the dog pull harder against you. But the new way uses that same principle. You apply gentle pressure with the leash, and the second the leash goes slack, you release it. The dog starts to learn to look for that release, not to fight the tension. This quote from Buck Brannaman just perfectly captures the whole mindset, whether you're talking about horses or dogs. It's all about patience. Instead of getting frustrated and demanding perfection right away, you break it down into tiny, successful steps. You build that confidence, and in the long run, you really do go slow to go fast. Part 4, the great training debate. So, as you can probably imagine, this whole new way of thinking didn't just show up quietly. No, it kicked off a massive debate in the world of dog training. And if you look at the timeline, you can really see this huge shift happening. Back in the 50s, it was all about dominance-based training. But then in the 80s, you see natural horsemanship start to get really popular. That influence starts to spill over, and by the 2000s, positive reinforcement is becoming the go-to mainstream approach for dogs.
This shift gets really clear when you compare two famous TV trainers. So, based on our source material, Cesar Millan's early philosophy was all about getting the dog into a calm, submissive state, with the human as the firm pack leader, using exercise, discipline, and even physical corrections. On the flip side, you have Victoria Stilwell's approach. It's all about 100% positive reinforcement. She uses rewards like treats and praise and avoids anything that could create fear or pain, all to build a relationship that isn't based on confrontation.
So what gives? Why the huge shift? Was it just a change in trends, or was there something more going on behind the scenes? What does the actual science have to say about all this?
Well, the answer is right there in our dog's biology. Scientists started doing studies actually measuring the physiological effects of different training styles. They looked at cortisol, that's the main stress hormone. And the results are, well, they're pretty black and white. As you can see, dogs that were trained using punishment-based methods had way higher cortisol levels. They were literally more stressed out. But the dogs trained with positive rewards, they stayed much, much calmer. And this wasn't just a couple of isolated studies. The evidence became so overwhelming that major groups like the American Veterinary Society of Animal Behavior came out with official statements. They now recommend reward-based training, not just because it works, but because it actively protects the animal's well-being and the bond you have with them. So that brings us to part 5, the power of partnership. Because when you boil it all down, this entire movement is about way more than just a set of techniques. It's a fundamental change in how we think. Think of it like this. The old way was basically a monologue. The human barks out commands, and the dog is just supposed to obey, end of story. But this new way, the one inspired by the horse whisperers, it's a dialogue. The human actually learns to listen to what the animal is saying and then guides them in a way that makes the animal want to cooperate. And this idea, adapted from a Buck Brannaman quote, really flips the script on who's responsible. When things go wrong, when communication breaks down, it's probably not that the animal failed. It's that we, the humans, failed to teach them in a language that they could actually understand.
So in the end, this whole journey, from a horse paddock to our living room floor, it's about so much more than just sit, stay, and roll over. It's about the relationship itself. So the next time you look at your pet, just ask yourself, what are they trying to tell you? Thanks for watching.